What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Donny Cates' run on The Incredible Hulk. And in the last video, we basically ended things seemingly with this idea that Bruce Banner essentially seemed to work for like General Thunderbolt Ross, or at the very least, was subservient to General Thunderbolt Ross, who of course had become President of the United States. Now, the other part of this is this reality is given a numerical designation, which usually happens faster than this, but this is referred to as Earth 122. So maybe that's something that'll become important later on down the line. I'm not entirely sure. Usually whenever Marvel actually assigns a numerical designation to an alternate reality, it usually means that alternate reality will appear in the future. So again, that's why I say you may or may not want to keep it in the back of your head. The thing about this is that, as we know, basically Thunderbolt Ross ends up discovering or finding out that there is a kind of enormous amount of gamma energy that it basically spiked from a specific mountain range. And what this does is it seems to indicate that Bruce Banner is actually in hiding from General Thunderbolt Ross, that he's not actually working for Thunderbolt Ross per se, and that what ends up happening here is Thunderbolt Ross, of course, is like, send everything, right? Like, get all the dropships going and everything like that, and I want to be there when it all happens. Now, here's the thing to understand. This would never be allowed to happen. The President of the United States would never be allowed to enter an active war zone. The Secret Service would keep that from happening, right? Like, the President's not allowed to put himself in harm's way like that. I mean, he wouldn't even be allowed to get close. He would never be allowed to enter an active war zone. But at the end of the day, as Grant Morrison once said, this is comics and none of it's real, so why does it matter? So here's the other thing about this. The big question that we kind of had to ask here is, what's going on with the rest of the world? Now, we don't necessarily get this in depth. We do get a couple questions answered, but really we basically end up finding out that it's largely Tony Stark who killed the world. Not Tony Stark directly, but the technology of Tony Stark. That what ended up happening is that with everything following the way that it did, right? The Gamma Revolution, as it was called, all these people with like gamma energy basically popping up all over the place, that what it did is it made Stark technologies essentially obsolete. Now, this is an important thing because before Tony Stark became Iron Man, as most of you guys know, he was a weapons manufacturer. And whether it's because you've seen the movie or you've read the comics, it was basically the art of war, right? The danger that comes with war itself, and like the loss of innocent lives, and the fact that Tony Stark was forced to face that fact when he was kidnapped, well, really during the Vietnam War in the comics versus during the Afghan conflict in the movies, that he ended up turning over a new leaf and basically using his technology in order to, one, make the world better, as well as turning himself into an Avenger. The difference here is that because this whole Gamma Revolution happened before Tony Stark became Iron Man, or at least maybe after he became Iron Man, the Stark Industries had no real value. And so the result of this is that Tony Stark filed for bankruptcy, right? Like literally his company's value just plummeted because he wasn't offering anything that was better than the whole Gamma Revolution, right? The idea of like gamma-powered beings. And so what this meant is that eventually his company was absorbed. Now, we're not really told who it was that absorbed his company, whether it was Justin Hammer or anything like that, or even just the federal government itself. The important thing here is that ultimately Tony Stark ended up just dying of his alcoholism, right? He ended up being found dead outside of a bar from alcohol toxicity and basically chronic pancreatitis. Following that, the technology of Tony Stark was basically used, presumably by the government, to kind of bridge the gap between the gamma radiation of the Incredible Hulk and the technology of Stark to create these basically gamma-powered Stark robots, right? And then in turn, they started wiping out everything, right? Like literally the X-Men popped up shortly after that, and they were all just annihilated by the federal government, right? Just totally wiped out completely. Now, the thing about this is that this looks like it takes place around the time of giant-size X-Men. So not only were the X-Men eradicated by the forces of basically the government using Stark tech, but they also nuked the entirety of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. Now, we're not really given much outside of that. It's really just kind of Banner reading about all this stuff in this alternate reality. But what we can also largely surmise here is that when he starts asking questions like, is there nobody left, right? What about Blade or Moon Knight or like Captain America or even like Spider-Man? That like the response of this alternate reality Banner is like, Blade or Moon, like I have no idea what you're talking about. So seemingly there is no Blade, there is no Moon Knight, which is really kind of interesting because in the main Marvel universe, Eric Brooks became Blade pretty early on, and he's been around for quite some time. So seemingly he may still be around and just nobody knows about him, or maybe he just never really came into existence at all. Captain America may still very well be frozen in ice. It's just one of those things where we're not really given a whole lot of answers. Maybe we will get them at a later point in time, but at the moment, we don't really know what's happening. The crazy thing about this, though, is that in the middle of all this, you basically end up having like the forces of Thunderbolt Ross, so basically the US government, that descend on this mountain range where you have the main Marvel Universe banner and this alternate reality banner. And so what it does is it leads to like alternate banner basically telling like, you know, the main Marvel Universe banner, right? Don't go out there, right? Like this is literally an army that's bred for the purpose of destroying people like you, right? Like this is not like you running out there and dealing with like bullets and things like that. They specialize in this. And so what you end up getting is that once Banner shows up out there, it's just like this colossal army with these giant mech suits. You know what this reminds me of? In a lot of ways, it reminds me of like Days of Future Past, right? It looks very, very similar to Days of Future Past. This is one of the reasons why that story was so landmark when it came out and why it has such a strong legacy, because so often whenever you look at alternate reality stories where essentially the superheroes have basically been killed off in some form or fashion, usually by the actions of the government itself, that it is some kind of Days of Future Past-esque scenario, right? The activation of some version of the Sentinel program. Sometimes the Sentinels become self-aware, other times the Sentinels never deviate from their programming, they never become self-aware, and they just operate based on the programming given to them by the federal government. But whatever it is, the funny thing about this is Banner tells his alternate reality counterpart, no, right, I'm from a whole different playing field. Like, I am not these gamma mutates that you see out there, right? These gamma irradiated beings. Just watch and learn, my friend. I'm on a whole different level from these guys. Now, once he jumps out there and literally Ross is just like, fire, right? Fire everything they have. Then it initially takes Banner by surprise, right? Like, he didn't really believe what alternate Banner was telling him until he was being hit with all these lasers that are literally piercing his skin, right? Which is a very difficult task to achieve. But in a world full of gamma irradiated Hulks, it was only a matter of time before technology was developed that could overcome those Hulks and by extension overcome this one. But as you guys know, and seemingly one of the things that makes the main Marvel Universe version of the Incredible Hulk so unique is that the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. And so as a result of this, literally Banner just like sets the whole engine system of the Incredible Hulk to stage 4. Now remember, those of you guys who are kind of getting caught up here, that basically it's Banner controlling the mind of the Incredible Hulk, and by setting the engine to stage 4, what he's basically doing is forcing the Incredible Hulk personality to experience like all these different horrors and these stages of combat, which in turn makes the Incredible Hulk personality angrier, and it makes the Incredible Hulk's body stronger and more durable, which allows Banner to continue fighting in places that he normally wouldn't be able to fight. The thing about this is that by going to stage 4, it basically activates a kind of hallucination of the Marvel zombies. So literally, while like the Hulk personality is just losing its mind attacking all these Marvel zombies, it amps him up more and more. His healing factor kicks in, he recovers almost instantaneously, and then like the strength boost comes. And in doing so, he starts laying waste to the forces of Thunderbolt Ross, right? Like at that point, it's really Thunderbolt Ross realizing he never had a chance in the first place, right? Like it's just absolute madness here. And even this alternate reality version of Banner is like, my God, like what the hell have I unleashed, right? They have never seen anything like this in this alternate universe. They've never seen like a tried and true Incredible Hulk. And that's one of the things that Donny Cates really seems to be hitting at, is that yes, you have different iterations of the Incredible Hulk from around the multiverse, but there only ever really seems to be one version of the Incredible Hulk that's as unique as this. Now, the reality is, we know that's not necessarily the case, right? I mean, the what if story based on like World War Hulk, where basically Hulk ends up killing all the superheroes and becomes a Herald of Galactus, like that was basically the same Hulk that we were used to, who seemingly had all the same powers, right? So it's not that uncommon to see, but it seems to be a fairly rare thing. And so what you end up getting is actually General Thunderbolt Ross, who contacts this alternate Banner and is just like, do something, right? Like call this guy off. If you don't call this guy off, then I'm bringing out your star pupil, right? This stupid kid that you love so much, and we're gonna send him down there. And so that's the crazy thing, is because where Ross is like, you got 10 seconds, right? Banner like literally tries to talk him down. It's like, no, like please don't do it, please don't do it. He was like, call your monster off or the boy falls, right? The boy gets knocked down into this whole great big huge thing. And so it's one of those things where like this alternate reality Banner absolutely cares for this kid, right? But at the end of the day, he ends up succumbing to Thunderbolt Ross and then tells Bruce Banner that you have to stop this madness, right? You have to stop fighting against the forces of Ross. And like the whole time, Bruce Banner's like, what are you talking about? Why do I have to stop fighting? And he never really gets an answer. He doesn't shut off the engine, right? He doesn't calm the Incredible Hulk down. That the Incredible Hulk persona keeps going crazy just like it always did. And so as a result of that, the countdown ends and Ross is just like dunzo and kicks the kid out of this whole thing. And so you have Bruce Banner talking to his alternate reality Banner counterpart, and it's like, tell me what's going on, like what's happening here. And this alternate reality Banner is like, okay, so here's the thing, right? Like this kid was basically my star pupil, right? Like he was a research student of mine, right? He was like a son to me. His name was Peter, and he was bitten by a spider that we had basically irradiated. Now, when that happens, right, in that moment, the forces of General Thunderbolt Ross retreat. They clear the battlefield. And when Bruce Banner asked the question, okay, this is probably stupid, but this irradiated spider that bit this kid Peter, what kind of radiation are we talking about here? And what it looks like is it was a gamma irradiated spider, because what manifests here is one of the most badass depictions of Spider-Man ever, right? Like literally this kid lands here and he ends up transforming into what's basically a Hulk Spider-Man. It is awesome. Oh my God, he looks so good. This is why I love Donny Cates, man. The guy just pulls these crazy ass rabbits out of his ass, right? It's nuts, the kind of stuff that he does. This guy's imagination is just bonkers. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.